Hi, my name is Angelina, and I'm literally so happy because my dear sister gave me a solo video. Today, I'm here to talk about the problems with the transgender community and how toxic it has become over the years. For context, I used to be trans for 2 to 3 years, and I don't want to hear it. If you're not trans now, you were never trans to begin with. Because what actually defines trans to you? If it's having gender dysphoria and literally hating yourself to the point of changing your name, almost getting a breast reduction, bending your boobs back, and changing your pronouns, then I was definitely trans. Like, I literally had 200 pronouns, Neos included, no joke. But if it's just the identity itself that makes you trans, then I had the identity, therefore making me trans back then. I don't know, but I do know you shouldn't invalidate my experiences with transness just because I am no longer trans. Anyways, here are the topics I want to discuss in this video. 1. The death of tomboys. 2. The invasion of women's spaces. 3. The hate on detransitioners. Now I want to make it very clear before we get into this video that I have no problem with transgender people as a whole. While by the left's logic, I may be quote-unquote transphobic, I can assure you I am not. I do not hate trans people. I just wish the community would do better. So really, this is coming from a place of love, not hate. Now, onto the video. Starting with the death of tomboys. Now, I have experienced myself with this as a former tomboy. I began identifying as transgender back in 2020. I had just turned 12 that February. I've been a tomboy for most of my life. I wouldn't wear skirts or dresses, I wouldn't do my makeup, and I swore black was leagues better than pink. I remember once I even got mistaken as a boy because I was wearing a hoodie that was covering my hair. And so I went home and asked my mom if I could cut it short. Considering how long I've been growing it out, it was no surprise she said no. I had only recently downloaded TikTok in December of 2019, as I've been hating on it for being girly ever since Musically. Time skipped to summer of 2020. I was scrolling, as all kids did back in quarantine, before I stumbled upon a video. 3 signs you're trans. The video basically said, if you don't feel connected to womanhood, then you're trans. Which, of course, doesn't actually mean you're trans. It can mean a lot of things, and in my case, it meant I was a tomboy when people around me wanted me to be more girly. Now, that video alone wasn't enough to convince me that I was trans. But then, video after video came on my For You page, and soon the idea began to set in. What if I really am trans? Even my own friends were making videos on the topic. Signs you're trans, how I figured out I was trans, etc., etc. None of them actually had any good reasons for being trans, and most of them were little kids, just like me. All the videos just reinforced gender stereotypes. Oh, as a kid, I didn't like Barbies and I wanted to play with trucks. I cut my hair to look like my brother. I like wearing pants. Like, girl, you can wear pants without being a man. This isn't the 1800s. The same goes with transgender women. Feminine men being told they're actually women because of their self-expression. Though I see it happening more to young girls than I see it happening to boys and men nowadays. To finish this section off, here's a quote from the article. My daughter's not transgender, she's a tomboy. Left alone, will boys really never wear pink? Will girls naturally reject Matchbox cars? Of course not. But if they show preferences for these things, we label them. Somehow, as we have broadened our awareness of and support for gender nonconformity, we've narrowed what we think a girl or a boy can look like and do. This sums up my point perfectly. People label those who are gender nonconforming as being transgender, while also trying to dismantle gender stereotypes. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. Either only boys can play with trucks and every girl who does must be transgender, or gender stereotypes are wrong and should not be reinforced in such a negative way. Oh, and one more thing that's sort of unrelated. Girls with body dysmorphia and girls who are just going through puberty and don't like their bodies are getting their symptoms mixed up with gender dysphoria due to a lot of big-name activists being very well describing it and sometimes even getting the two terms mixed up. Just because you don't like your body does not mean you are trans. Okay, that's the end of this section. Thank you. Now on to the invasion of women's spaces. This one is way shorter than the other section because of how cut and dry it is. Leah Thomas was the worst male in his league, but switched over to the female league and somehow shot to the top. If you think this is fair, then you have to be blind, deaf, and dumb. He towers over the females and walks around naked with a boner in the female locker rooms, but that's completely fine because he says he's a woman. An overweight trans woman winning a beauty pageant over actual woman, Miss Universe being owned by a trans woman, a sorority having to sue and losing a university for allowing a trans woman into their space, trans women mansplaining womanhood, the list could reach from my head to my toes. Oh, and there's no such thing as a trans man. Unless you have bottom surgery and have done what you can do to look like a woman, you have no right to call yourself a lesbian. Sincerely, a real lesbian. And last, but definitely not least, the hate on detransitioners. As a social detransitioner, the hate I get from the community is insane. And last, but definitely not least, the hate on detransitioners. As a social detransitioner, the hate I get from the community is insane. I've been invalidated on multiple occasions and sent death threat after death threat. Luckily for me, I have never medically transitioned, so I don't have to deal with the side effects of that as a quote-unquote cis woman. I hate that term. And because I have a supportive family and friends, I don't have to deal with any hate in real life. But unfortunately, a lot of other people don't get that same luxury. They're stuck with the side effects of their transition and still get invalidated and sent death threats on and offline. It's especially sad knowing a lot of these detransitioners transition very young, like under 18 young. And even when they're older, a lot of the times they weren't told the full truth pertaining to their transition and end up with side effects they weren't warned of. It seems the internet has a hate boner for people who are happy with themselves after their detransition, and have an even bigger hate boner for people who are upset with the community after their detransition. It seems they want you to stay in their cult, and anyone who gets out is the enemy. Of course, not all trans people think this way, but of course, the loudest minority is the one who is heard. And if a community cannot separate themselves from the toxic people of it, then they are just as at fault for their actions. In conclusion, transgenderism nowadays is more of a social contagion/trend that is infecting the youth of Western society and reinforcing gender stereotypes rather than being a last resort for people who are genuinely going through gender dysphoria. Transgender women should not be in female spaces unless it's absolutely necessary, and detransitioners are people too. Thank you for listening or whatever. They end or something.